Hi, this is Professor Werbach again with some wrap-up statistics for the January to April 2014 running of my gamification MOOC on Coursera. First of all, you may notice that the scenery behind me is a little bit different than what you've been seeing in the earlier videos. This is my actual office, so that's why it's considerably more cluttered and messy than what you're used to seeing. I assure you that it's considerably more messy if you could see certain aspects off camera. The videos for the class were recorded in a specially built soundstage in Hollywood designed to look just like a professor's office. No, not really. They were recorded in the empty office next to mine where there was some more space to set up the equipment. But again, this is the real office that I work in. Looks pretty similar, just with a lot more books. Anyway, on to the statistics. So in this session, we had about 78,000 students registered for the class. That compares to slightly more, 81,000 the first time I ran the course in 2012, and slightly less, about 66,000 the second time in 2013. Now, the fact that the total went down from the first session to the second session is not surprising. We're seeing in most MOOCs a fall off of 20% or more in registrations when they're run multiple times. The surprising thing is this time, the fact that the numbers went up and in fact almost reached the level of the first time the MOOC was run. That's very unusual. And it suggests to me potentially that as the number of students taking MOOCs and aware of MOOCs go up, that there's still a lot of untapped demand, but potentially as awareness of gamification goes up, there's still untapped and maybe even growing demand for knowledge and learning about this topic. So that's certainly very good to see. The other factor is that I changed the length of the course this time from 6 weeks to 10 weeks, so there was more time for people to sign up for the class. So that probably had some effect. But clearly the demand is still there and still very strong. About half of you said that it was the first time you had taken a MOOC. So about half of the class have taken a MOOC before. I'm not sure whether that's a large number or a small number. Obviously, over time, the numbers will grow. When I started this was one of the first MOOCs that was available on Coursera, so very few people had taken one before. Now we're at a point where a pretty substantial number of people have, but for many of you, this was still a new phenomenon. In terms of student demographics, some quick statistics, close to 170 different countries represented. That's actually a little bit more. I think there were about 150 in the previous two runnings of the course, but people from all over the world, which is, of course, the extraordinary thing about MOOCs, that we can reach people in so many different places. And I'm here in the United States. Only about a quarter of the people signed up for the class were in America. About 62% male. In the previous runnings of the class, it was about 2/3, 66, 67%, so a slight drop in that number. 77% working or otherwise not in school. So 3/4 of you are not full-time students. And that, again, is a consistent number with what I've seen in previous versions of this MOOC and what we've seen in other MOOCs. And 83% of you have a university degree. 43% have some advanced degree, like a law degree or a master's degree or something like that. Again, numbers that are consistent with prior versions of the class and other MOOCs. The majority of people are not taking this as a substitute for a university education. Some are, but a majority are using it to supplement their formal learning. So, as I said, there were about 78,000 people who registered for the class, but that's not the most accurate representation of how many people were in the course, because it's easy to click a button saying, I sign up for this course, especially you could do that several months before the course was even started or before you even knew when the course was going to start. A more accurate number is how many people actually started the course, how many people actually watched at least one video, did something on the course. And that number was about 51,000 for this course, so about 2/3 of the people who signed up actually started the course. That's a little bit higher than the norm. I think typically it's 40 or 50% of people who sign up actually start the class on Coursera MOOCs. Out of that number, or out of the total number, the 78,000 number, 4,510 passed the course, either received a certificate of accomplishment, a statement of accomplishment, or if they were in signature track, the verified certificate. So that's just under 6% of students who are registered. That compares to about 10% of registered students in 2012 and about 8% in 2013. So as you see, the numbers are going down. Now, the first thing is people sometimes say, well, that's a really small number. Even 10% of the students who sign up is a small number who finish. The reality is, first of all, the 78,000 number is not a good indicator of people who actually started the class, and even the 51,000 number isn't, because there are many people who are just curious, who are not seriously intending or deciding to spend the time to go all the way through the course, and so they check the course out, or maybe they watch a few videos and they learn something. They're not analogous to a student here at a university like where I teach who comes and starts and expects to finish the class. The average MOOC on Coursera has something like a 4 to 5% completion percentage, again, relative to the number of registered students. And the data I've seen are for courses like this one, courses that are not quantitative courses, that use peer assessments as a core feature of assessment. So they not only require you to do problem sets that can be machine graded, but they require you to grade each other. Those MOOCs typically have completion percentages of 3% or lower of total registrations. So close to 6%, we're still doing better than the norm, but this is smaller than the previous runnings of this class. So why did that happen? I don't know. One element definitely is the extension from 6 weeks to 10. One thing that did was, again, allowed more people to sign up for the class, but people who are signing up for the class 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 weeks in are much less likely, and in some cases later on have no opportunity to score 70 points out of 100 and get the certificate or the statement in the class. And also the fact that the course was longer meant that more people didn't finish. People who started either lost interest or had work or life things come up that made it harder for them to finish the class. There is other data, other studies are now finding that completion percentages are higher in shorter classes. I wanted to experiment with a longer class, partly to give people more of an opportunity to finish the class. There's some people who can't finish in the shorter class time, and partly to experiment. And I'm still looking at the data to see other differences. But this is what I would have expected, that the numbers would go down somewhat from the prior sessions. In terms of other metrics of interactivity, still a huge amount of activity going on. Over 10,000 discussion board posts, about the same as in previous runnings of this course. Over 100,000 peer assessments. In other words, 100,000 times that a student assessed another student's work. That was done by close to 7,000 different students. Now again, that's a minority of all the students who are in the course, but still a very substantial number of students involved. This level of activity is much greater than the total level of activity of all the students that I've taught in my entire time at Wharton. So there's a lot going on, and again, relative to the norms in courses like this, these are generally pretty good numbers. The big picture in terms of student engagement looks like this. We start again with close to 80,000 students and wind up with 4,500. There's a very fast drop off towards the beginning, and then it levels off. This is the same pattern again that we see with virtually every other MOOC or ex-MOOC of the Coursera type. When you break it down, again, it's somewhat misleading. And there's different ways that we can slice the data. So if you break out the numbers, the blue chart in front is the one that I just showed you, starting with the total number of registered students. The red chart, the second one there, is starting with the number of students who actually begin the course. So if students who do anything at all, the completion percentage is more than double, it's 13%. The third one is students who do any assignment. So even students who took the first 5-question quiz, what percentage completed? More than a quarter, 28%. That's starting to look a lot better. And the final graph, the purple graph in the back, is of students who did even one peer assessment, 61% finished the class. So of the students who gave some indication they were willing to do a reasonable amount of work to get an assessment and to get through the course, a majority finished. And you see there that there's an uptick. 75% of those students took the final. Many of them were students who either didn't do all the peer assessments or joined later. And then 61% overall finished the course and got a passing score. How does this compare to previous sessions of the course? Very similar patterns. Again, the overall number at the end goes down somewhat, but we see almost exactly the same patterns. And this suggests to me that in some ways the engagement is quite good. In some ways we still have a lot of work to do. And there's lots of ways that I could do different things. The course could be structured differently if what we really want to do is push up the engagement numbers. Now, there are trade-offs. And so it's not, I think, necessarily the case that that should be the entire way MOOCs are judged. But it does give us some indication of what the patterns are. And again, we're seeing very consistent patterns across a lot of these courses. So what's next? Students often ask me if there's an advanced gamification MOOC or gamification 2 that I'm offering. At this point, there's not. I have no specific plans to offer a follow-on, partly because I've designed this course to give you all the basics that you need to have a good understanding of gamification. That being said, I'm always considering other possibilities, and there may at some point be a follow-on course, which I'll announce when it happens. Secondly, I've mentioned this a few times, but my book, For the Win, provides additional details and frameworks and examples around these topics. It's available in ebook and paperback formats around the world, as well as translated now into several languages, including Spanish and Japanese and Korean, with Chinese coming soon. Third, if you want to keep track of what I'm up to and my comments and ideas around gamification, best way is follow me on Twitter. @KWerb is my Twitter username. You'll find out not only about my work in gamification, but my activities around internet and telecommunications policy and my thoughts on the future of MOOCs. And finally, what I would encourage is that if you have been interested in this course, you go out and apply it. The best way to build upon what I've taught you is to go do it yourself and to learn more about gamification by doing. As I've said many times, this is still a new field, and MOOCs are still a new form of learning. We're all learning about these phenomena together. And so I hope that you will take what you've learned in this class and apply it. And I am excited about the future of continuing to understand how we can leverage gamification and how we can leverage MOOCs and other new forms of interactive online teaching and learning to help make the world better. So again, thanks for being part of the journey with me.